Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Fred Birnbaum, Idaho Freedom Foundation. I stand in support of House Bill 270. The late William F. Buckley had I think, a very important saying about behavior that was not up to community standards, as long as they don't do it in the streets or frighten the horses. And I think that's really the issue here. They're doing it in the streets. They might not be frightening horses, but they're frightening children. And I think it's important to look at the bill as compared to current law. In current law, it does say willfully and lewdly. Okay, you're guilty, so I don't think cutting the lawn would necessarily apply. It also says exposes, current law, his or her genitals, and then is added, develop female breasts, including the nipple. So that's not a prom dress. I mean, at least the ones I've ever seen. I would also point out that at the very end, or near the end, in subsection 2, I'm surprised nobody brought this up, but it's actually a third time within 5 years, not a second, is guilty of a felony. And the words shall were crossed out, and now it says may be in prison for up to 5 years. So the penalties haven't been enhanced, obviously, but what this bill is about is restoring decency and community standards of behavior. And yes, we can try to come up with these scenarios, but again, currently, it says in the law, in any public place or in a place where there is present another person. So that actually exists in law right now for exposure. So that's not changing. What is changing is adding the obviously clearly underlined section where it talks about develop female breasts, including the nipple, and then obviously the medically or hormonally altered male breasts. And I think the whole gynecomastia thing, honestly, is exaggerated. I think, we realize most men as we age, we're not quite the way we were, but that's not what this bill is about, frankly, Mr. Chairman and committee.
I need you to wrap up. There may be questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wrapped up, and I'll stand for any questions.
Well, I was just curious what you were saying about how we haven't aged so well. If you want to explain that further, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I might be getting, as they say, ahead of my skis. I think it's pretty obvious that men's chests at age 65 are not, even those of us that go to the gym every day, the same as age 25. That's not what this bill is about. I think there should be some seriousness here. That isn't what this bill is about. So if a middle-aged gentleman is on the river and doesn't look quite as good as he did, that's not what this bill is about. I think we should be clear about that.
Any questions? All right. Mr. Birnbaum, I think you're younger than me, I'm not sure, but when I was young, the police would cite or arrest people for being flashers. This is what's in my mind during this bill. Is this different in your mind than when we were young and there were flashers that flash people of their private parts?
Mr. Chairman, actually, I think it's an extension of that, and perhaps the difference is now this is sort of a new form of flashing, if you will. I mean, really what this is about, when people do this deliberately to offend others, what the community is saying with this bill in response to that is, we really don't appreciate it. And the reason, in my view, the language was added about the medically or hormonally altered breast to appear like female breasts is because this is actually what is happening. So when we were younger, that didn't happen. And maybe that's when the notion of flashers was just what you were describing. But this is something that has happened. It happened in Nampa. And so this is in response to that. And frankly, I would tell that community, if you kept private behavior private, nobody would care. It's the public display of behavior that shouldn't be public in the presence of children specifically, but not exclusively.
Representative Rubel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for a question. Mr. Birnbaum, if the concern is the public display, then why do you feel it's necessary for this bill to extend to private property and actions that are taken strictly in a private setting?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Rubel, that's actually in current code. So if I go to lines 16 and 17, It's not underlined, so it says in any place or in any place where there's present another person or persons. So that's in current code. And I think the intent of your question is, could this language in current code be construed to be overly broad? And I guess, is there an example because of course this is in current code, where someone was maybe sunbathing or something and they were charged with indecent exposure? And I'm not aware of it. I have to be honest. I haven't looked into the charges, but that's in current code right now. So it's not being changed. What's being changed is the addition of the language that we've discussed.
Representative Gannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Birnbaum, when the bill was introduced, I believe there was reference to we were updating or cleaning up this particular code section. If we're doing that, why shouldn't we clean up and address where it is overly broad and applying to private homes, private backyards, and essentially private conduct?
Respond if you're able.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Gannon, I think that's a reasonable question, but it really should be addressed to the sponsor of the bill. I mean, had I written the bill, perhaps I would have done it differently, but I'm just responding to the bill as it exists with the circumstances. But that's a question you could ask the sponsor, I think.
See no further red lights. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.